Okay, welcome everybody. We've kind of chatted a little bit, but what we were just going to do real quick is just first off, we're going to start with a report. There's been a few pieces of people that have talked to the cities or other organizations, and so that's the first piece of this is just return a report. We're all just going to kind of communicate what has happened. And then the second part from there is kind of open it up for a question section of what everybody's general questions are, and then from there, when we are educated, from there kind of create action plans if we think it's appropriate. So that's the general outline. Rachel, I'm going to turn it to you first and have you report on some of your findings. Rachel is my wife and a hottie that I like, but I'm paid to say that, and I also chose that. So
yeah, I'm paying you. Hi. So I am Rachel. We're business partners and life partners, just kind of how it goes. So I got roped into this, but I'm been more active lately because I do the real estate agent side of things. There's a home that I've listed for sale in Orem as a short-term rental. It's been running for 3 years as a short-term rental, and selling it as a short-term rental. So my involvement in this is pretty heavy because I need to make sure it's legal. So I got hit up by this guy named Isaac. Is he on here? No.
I don't think so.
He received notice on one of his Orem units because of that transient lodge section of the code. Really, it comes down to complaints. In reality, they just get shut down with that code based on complaints. So then I dove in and I called city council members and such, and they actually just had a meeting the night before I called them about this, and the city attorney was presenting it and drafting. They were making a draft. So we have the draft. We've read through the draft. Basically, thanks to the new House bill, I mean, I think it's a bonus because now cities are able to actually talk about it without just shutting them down. And present solutions to the problem, and they realize, sorry, our child is here, not time. Anyway, so with that, with their ability to enforce it, they're pretty open-minded. Orem specifically, they told me flat out, there's this draft. We literally just threw everything in a draft, and we'd love your feedback on it. So I would eventually like to get everybody's feedback on it because I have my own, obviously, but feedback is good. So I want to hear that from everybody. But they're just drafting it. The laws are going to change. I don't foresee them banning them outright. I think that they will make a system to be legal because the city council people that I talked to, they were like, well, we like staying in Airbnbs, and I have proof that it ups the value if it's done correctly. It ups everyone's property value. I think we can get into the opinions of the draft later, but
and just so everybody knows, just in the chat, I just posted it's a Google file that is the associated draft of what's happened that way. On my side, I've been in contact with the Airbnb policy team. There's a specific, Alex is his name, and they're willing to be involved from the standpoint of getting the word out, sending letters and sending an email to all hosts that are located in Orem. So that's one thing that they're willing to be involved with. Rent Responsibly is another organization that I've contacted a little bit with. Lisa probably will give a better report on some of that, of what their involvement or facilitation will be. From my standpoint, something I'm really passionate about and talked a lot about, but right now, really one step back, House Bill 256, what it allows most cities is it removes elements of what's called the not well language. The senator or the representative that passed in 2019, his last name was not well, but what it facilitated is it made it so cities cannot use listings as evidence of short-term rental. They had to receive complaints. While it's not directly that, they are now able to use the listing not as the sole piece of evidence, but in conjunction with other evidence, which really comes down to complaints, parking, noise, and parties, really. So,
right. So Aaron, they can't go on and just look for any short-term rental in Orem. They do have to have a complaint, and it's a way to, and I kind of don't blame them.
Yeah.
We're very hard to find.
Yeah.
And so the only way they could really find us is if they have a complaint, is to go on and find us. So I didn't think that was a terrible thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just so everyone's clear, it isn't that they can just go on and start shutting down short-term rental owners. It's only if you have a complaint in order for them to find us.
Yeah, it's two-prong is probably the way. They can use your listing to identify. That's not the only piece of evidence. The second is other evidence, which in Orem has been focused on complaint base. In other cities, Salt Lake City proper as an example, they have been sending out uniform officers knocking on the door and asking for people to sign affidavits. That's one way that they've gone around some of those laws. I don't think that that will be the case of Orem. Nonetheless, I'm just giving you an example of what a city could do if they so elected.
So they can't look at tax kind of things. Because I thought something was brought up.
Actually,
in that
Which
meeting.
that brings up a great point. They
fees.
now can use the taxation
that's what I was
as
concerned
part of
about.
House Bill 256 as well as they can use the taxation records. And this is something too, so everybody is educated. Most of the time, we all think that while if we're on Airbnb that we are paying the transient tax. That is true. However, how it works is it goes to a holding account from Airbnb, interest earning. They're receiving money on that, and then at the indicated time frame, they are paying it to the state. The state then distributes it according to what they think is appropriate. And it is not always Orem had 2, so they get 2, and Provo had 3, so they get 3. It is not clarified, and it's because that data isn't shared. So that has been a complaint many cities have had. Thus, the change in this bill will allow cities to get access to that data and thus say, hey, state, we had 2, we deserve 2. Those are probably the biggest things from my report. Lisa, I know that you have you've been in contact with another councilman. Would you give us a report of your associated efforts in regards to this?
Yeah, so a neighbor of mine is a councilman, and he's been great. I've, since we moved here, I've known him and just chatted with him. And we're a big facility or a big home, so he's just kind of kept me afloat of everything going in and out of council meetings, saying things coming down the pipelines. I talked to him after listening to the meeting and reading the report in the 256 bill. He just wanted suggestions and ideas. So I mentioned to you, Aaron, prior to really talking with you, I'd sent him a few different things. Just kind of my 2 cents of what has worked. And I've been talking to Rent Responsibly and a few other people just trying to get things together because I haven't seen this in other cities like you have, Aaron. So I'm kind of more alert or I guess concerned. And because Tom is very much, he just wants to know and feels like all the other city council people want to know too. How, and he's mentioned before, it's always the bad ones that you hear about. You don't hear about the good ones because they're out there doing their thing and nobody comes to city council usually except to complain. So he's happy to hear all the positive things and things that are working. So I did send him, and everything I've sent him, he's sent out to all the other city council people, the city attorneys, the team management, pretty much everyone. So I was hoping to get some more information before I email him again, or even talk to him. I saw him outside yesterday. And so I sent him the Rent Responsibly I told you about, that list, because they were talking about wanting to have some kind of legislation or fees or something to kind of keep track of people and to know of all the people that are doing it well and right. So I sent him the Rent Responsibly thing, which he passed on, and that's just that form that you print out that says, I'm monitoring noise, trash, and parking, and these are the rules, and you update your guests certain times, pre-booking, bookings, day, that kind of thing, just to say you're on top of that, and so that's not a problem with neighbors. Noise is 75% of it, so they like to see those things being addressed. And then just also said we're out there. I was going to talk to a couple other people today and get back to them with what we talked about. So that's pretty much it.
Wonderful.
So I really haven't talked to the other city council. He's just kind of forwarded my emails.
Yeah,
or
I think that's appropriate.
And I've talked to another one too, and she said to draft an email. That's
right what Tom said.
Yeah, she goes, honestly, I read them all, but you're going to want to keep it short to make sure everybody reads it. And so that's part of this meeting
I
too.
wonder if that's what they say, because that's what Tom was saying. So did
Yeah.
you send an email?
Not
Or
yet.
was
I
she-
was waiting for this meeting so I could draft one with other people's feedback as well.
Okay, because I've sent a couple to Tom who said forward. Which council person are you talking with?
Lynette. I can't remember her name.
What's her last name?
I can't remember.
I know by last name.
What's that?
Lene Millet.
Thank you.
Millet.
I
There we go.
combined the two. Lene
Okay,
Millet,
gotcha,
Lynette.
Millet.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Okay.
Okay, so you've been talking with Millet then.
Yeah.
Okay. He seems really receptive and such, and
Yep, she really does. Like, she's like, I think the biggest thing that I brought up too is, and how cities are going wrong about it right now, is the way people are getting around this rule is they are allowing it in their CC&Rs or HOA. So in Salt Lake City proper, for example, that's townhomes and apartment buildings, the only affordable housing in Salt Lake City. And so,
You
and
know,
Cottonwood Heights is the
do we-
same.
Are we finding that we really need to compare ourselves to what other cities are, or do we really want to just point out the strengths of why this is important in Orem? Because doesn't it feel like they already know the problems and the issues of the other cities? It's really, well, for one, it did change in Alpine, it did change in Murray, mostly because Alpine was because there's no other hotels, so it was a bonus for their area. We can't say that here. Murray, there's plenty of hotels, but I think Murray finally got to the point of if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
But I think in Orem, if we're pointing out the benefits, our guests want to stay in short-term rentals. And when you have the city of Orem has to know that we draw tourism and families.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a given, and I mean they know that. No one on that city council is ignorant enough to say, "What, we draw from outside?" Of course we do, and we don't draw skiers. This is not. No one comes to Orem and goes, "Yay, I'm going skiing at Sundance." It's not a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
We're drawing family. We're drawing. You can't have a community between two major universities and surrounded by temples. Whether anyone on this group is a Latter-day Saint or not, temples brings you business.
Correct.
I mean, none of us are that ignorant to know that that's not where we're getting our money.
So
So,
I would
Whether
agree.
we love BYU or not. So it's more to me, I would think we would talk to them, and we know what brings people to Orem. And that's why we're here, because our guests are proving every day why they want us, because we're all full.
Right. So the biggest thing that the cities are concerned about, and really it's just because it's low-hanging fruit, is affordable housing. So in order to shut that down immediately, it's best to prove how like other cities are shooting themselves in the foot because of their laws with that. Because in reality, the best short-term rentals, the operating ones that are, quality operators, are not affordable housing. Not
Correct.
something that
say
you would
because
consider
none of
affordable.
us have homes that the affordable housing people could rent.
Correct. And if you're going to play that card, well, the only affordable housing in other cities is now being used by short-term rentals because that's how you've written the laws.
Right. But this
So,
town or apartment.
And I
Right.
have had as feedback, I've had two council people from two different cities indicate the validity of the argument of the affordable housing. Cottonwood Heights, for example, how their law is presently written is it specifically states you can only do short-term rental in complexes that have 7 units or more. I'm in contact with an owner who has a complex of 13, and he is considering doing rental arbitrage to someone who will rent all of them from him, so his problem is solved, for like $900 to $1,200 per unit, which literally is taking away from the affordable housing. Now, the reason that I think that it's important for anybody, and as you draft or have those conversations, is it's a low-hanging fruit, and most council people, because they're looking out for their constituents, it is something, regardless. The other dynamic I think is hilarious. Cottonwood Heights, as we all know, is known for its affordable housing, not. Nor is,
Not.
I mean, not to say Orem is not, but there is a dynamic that probably the majority of the larger homes are people who are here interested. Our homes are not affordable housing, and so that is something that I think will strike a chord with a lot of people as you communicate or give your associated comments.
When I was talking to
And
Millet, that
I-
was her biggest
Go ahead.
thing. Sorry. When I was talking to Millet, that was her biggest thing. She goes, what you're saying is key there, is that, you know, you hear short-term rentals are being filled. You don't, I mean, people just think affordable housing, you're taking away from people. They don't think any further than that. So,
Correct.
go ahead.
And again, I do think that it's staying focused on Orem. Now, if they bring something up to us about something else, we can answer to that. But focusing on Orem and saying, look, this is why we do this.
Sure.
This is why we're here. And this is why you're, I hate to call them tourists. This is why the people who visit this, what were we voted? The #1 family,
Family
whatever.
Time USA. I was just telling Aaron.
We voted that because people don't want to come here. That's why they gather here. We have to make this about Orem, and that this is, you know, now one, we can say, look at the tourism tax or the transient tax. Look at this. We can, but they know that.
Yeah.
The dollar amount, we need to be more. This is so important to the people who come here, and quite honestly, the families that live here. The families that live here are saying, great, Mom and Dad, you rent a short-term rental down the street, and you guys, and we'll all gather. Because my apartment or house won't fit everybody.
Yeah.
And sorry that people who visit here have large families. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's interesting because someone said, but who stays in your houses? And granted, it is literally all over the board, but don't most of us find that these are just really terrific families who are here for weddings, funerals, and BYU activity. I mean, we all know our busiest day of the whole year in Orem is not Christmas. It's BYU graduation.
Mhm.
We all charge far more money for BYU graduation week than we do Christmas. And we fill every time. I mean, what would the people at BYU and all of the people that come into town, this is a need. And so I'm hoping that we're focusing that we're filling a need as much as they're helping us as well.
Mhm.
Now, we know we have had some bad apples. We all know about the goat house, and that sucked.
Yep.
But he's gone, and none of us are sitting here as professionals saying, don't police us, police them.
Right.
Because we want the bad ones gone as much as they do. Now, I was thinking, and I don't know if this is something would help Orem City, what if we put together a little coalition of short-term rental, will help them could we provide a little, for anyone new that's getting a brand new license or starting out new, could we provide an education class for them? That once they've got a certification, then they can go to the city of Orem and then apply for their license so that they at least know that there are rules and regs, that there are municipal rules that they need to follow, et cetera, et cetera. So they don't just walk in and city of Orem just carte blanche gives it to every goat house out there.
Well, how many are licensed right now?
Well,
So here's the,
Because I mean,
Sure.
we're licensed, but I've got the feeling that most people aren't licensed. You can just
no,
start.
but Lisa, most of us, they weren't doing short-term rental licensing. They've been doing landlord licensing.
Right.
I mean, so
That's
none of us technically are licensed for short-term rental, but we're all, well, I don't know about everybody. Those of us who have been doing it for a while, we're licensed with landlord licenses.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I have too. Because I mean, that's one thing they would start is just licensing. So when I talked to the
terrific.
councilman, it seemed like they had a lot on their plate, and this is one thing. And by doing this draft that the attorney made, I mean, I know it's an easy way out. They don't want to spend a ton of time, but they would love other people to volunteer, like what you were saying, Carol, or like making an email, whether your wife does it for Millet or I do it for Tom or whatever, something short and simple that lists bullet points each thing that then could say, okay, this is what's going to work. Let's go with this.
Right.
Okay, and we all know her first name isn't Millet, right?
I know. That's all I know.
Not for calling her Millet. It's a tiny bit disrespectful.
Okay, but that's what Tom said. Okay, what's her first name then?
Lene.
I don't remember.
Lene? Okay, I'll call her Lene.
We would hate to start a conversation with them and go, and Millet said, and then
Yeah,
we
I
all
will. But that's how her signs come up. And since I'm on the subject, Erin, what's your lovely wife's name? Because it's not written here.
Rachel.
Rachel. Sorry, I'm not good with first names, as we can tell. Rachel.
That's
got it.
fine. Hi.
Sorry. Anyway, I'm hoping to get something short and that hits the bullet points and just say, this is what would work best for Family Town USA. This is our guests that come. This is what we want to keep doing. And this is how we see best it would work.
Yeah. I think I do want to make, Marissa, it sounds like you were open. Go ahead.
Well, I just have a lot of questions. So I'll finish when you guys are done speaking. I'll ask my questions.
Okay.
We're just sort of becoming more aware. We've done Airbnb in the past. We obviously want to get back at it. Lots of issues are arising in our neighborhood, and so we think maybe Airbnb is a solution for us again. But is it May 7th they're planning to implement this? Is that correct?
I don't think they
So,
gave a specific
no.
date yet. Do you?
I have not heard a date.
What is
May
coming
7th. Yeah, go ahead.
in May is when House Bill 256 comes into operation or effective, which means that then cities have more tools to be able to facilitate regulation as they in each city see fit.
So this might not be for some time, but it would take time longer than that to implement it.
Right. Well, I mean, really what's happening is most cities are beginning the conversation, they are already down that where they're saying, hey, this is what the world is doing. In May, we have to have law put in place in order, because it's not like once it passes, then they begin the conversation, but rather May, we are required to change our rules. So let's work towards it so that when May comes, these are the new rules.
Okay.
And the most important thing also to add to how we're presenting to them, every single one of us wants to be in compliance. None of us wants to be in the moonshine business. You know, none of us wants to be hiding guests in our basements. But we all want to stay in compliance, so let's just happily work together to find the right balance for everybody, for the city as well.
Yeah.
Aren't they planning to meet on Tuesday, next Tuesday, a week from today?
Yeah.
That's what I
And
said.
my thought was Tom had already reviewed the attorney when I talked the draft when I talked to him, and just making points and ideas, kind of a thing. So I was really hoping we could have something prior to Tuesday to maybe be in front of that, saying, "Hey, we're the people trying to do it right. This is what we think would be helpful. This is what we don't think helpful. Aaron's been to other city councils. This is what has worked with other cities, or vice versa. This is what's been a problem," kind of thing. And have something short and sweet that we could present to the city council. Or like Rachel's emailing Lene, I email Tom, let them send all of those things to all the councilmen, the team management, and say, hey, these are things that other hosts are concerned about. These are things they're following already. That hasn't been an issue. Why the house hasn't been an issue.
Right. So my plan was to draft an email, send it to all of them, and then show up on Tuesday with a public statement of sorts.
That's terrific. And can we read it before you
Yeah,
send it off?
Absolutely.
Really what Rachel and I were, now this is, Marissa, if you have more questions, we'll get to it. Really what Rachel and my thought process of this meeting was, one, education, getting everybody on board, but two, coordination from a standpoint of if we collectively, as the number of hosts that we are, can agree to a statement or an associated rules. I just think if I was a council person and if we had all 9 of us get up and say the same thing, there's an aspect of it's like, oh my gosh, like, thank you, I heard it. Thank you, I heard that. Yeah. As opposed to, hey, we the coalition or we the alliance of hosts of Orem who want proper regulation. All of us that are here, let's stand up. We represent 20 homes, 40 homes, 60 homes. This is how we feel. And we would ask that our representative, Lisa and Carol, be put into consideration for being part of it or whatever it is.
And be careful not to use the word feel. This isn't
Sure.
about our feelings. This is all business.
Yeah.
And this is how great it's going to be for the city of Orem for us to work together, but we don't want to use the word.
Yeah.
Well, so I have one question because I was planning to call Tom after this and tell him what we discussed. Should I take kind of a back burner since you're going to work with Linnea?
No.
I'm just wondering because I don't think it like
So-
Aaron just said, having 9 people. I don't even know if you need
This is what I would say specifically, Lisa, is really advocacy. A lot of it comes down to the trust element and those relationships. You already have that relationship with Tom, and just focusing on one council person versus not may not get the associated result. Really what's going to happen is Tom, eventually when the vote comes for whatever iteration, you are going to be the first person that pops in her head. And maybe for Lene, it is Rachel or whatever. Really, it is multiple conversations and multiple positive interactions of everybody advocating appropriately and collaborating rather than fighting.
Right. I'm just wondering, are we double hitting on people? Do you know what I mean? Because I've already emailed. He already has the rent responsibly contract. He's forwarded that to the whole team, to the councilmen, to the attorneys. He's already had the emails I've sent in listing that I talked with you about. And then I'm guessing Rachel's already had Linnea email the attorneys and management and everything, city team, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, that's what she told me to do, and I haven't drafted one yet. So
I don't think, Lisa, that it's a negative to talk to different councilmen as long as we're conversing the same thing. And then afterwards, because we don't want to overburden them, to afterwards kind of pull together as a team and then give them the same things if we're sending out emails. Rachel, if you like to, my husband's a PR guy. He's obviously cannot come to the meetings and cannot be a face forward, but is happy to read the letter before you send it and give you any suggestions from a PR perspective.
Perfect. That would be great. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, Rachel, if I should email you the things that have already been sent out to all the city council people.
Forward it to me.
I was doing this prior to even making this meeting. I was just going, oh man, I want to do something. I was just talking with Tom. Not, gathering, which is a lot smarter. That's why I held off and said, oh, I'll let you know after the meeting, kind of a thing. But maybe just so.
Yeah, it couldn't hurt. Send it to me. So
they're not getting a bunch of different things, because I agree, having 9 people come out or sending multiple emails about different things might be confusing.
Yeah, send me what you have. My whole goal is to draft the important things, bullet point, really easy to read, shorter.
Okay. And then why don't you send me what you created, and I can just say, this is what the team or the alliance, whatever we call ourselves, created. And then I can send the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think that would be better than I don't know. I see a lot of, keeping it short and simple was the one thing both the council people kept reiterating. Because then they could present it short and simple. These are the facts. This is what to do. Let's go forward.
Right. And I can post it in. Can we post it in the event?
Yeah, we'll share everything that way, and we can make an email list.
Perfect. That's all. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't overdo that.
I wanted to now kind of pause. Let's open it up for questions.
There's some in the chat.
And fill it in. Oh, okay.
Oh.
Marissa, go ahead since you're already there, we'll jump back into these.
I'm supposed to write in the chat.
No, you're fine. There's no rules of engagement here.
As far as the moving forward on this agenda that you sent out, this is their proposed agenda, nothing's set in stone. Is only the council voting on this, or is this something we vote on as a city?
Most of the time it will just be presented to the council for consideration. They'll give feedback, they rework it, and then it's presented to be put into the ordinance. So most likely it will not go to the city, meaning individual constituents, but rather city council people voting.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. So is how moldable still is that agenda? Because here's what makes me nervous is the number of people they're saying that they will allow 8.
It's funny, and I have lots
well,
of points to that.
and specific on that, I think that is the majority of people's concern is the 8, and it's the dichotomy of a basement apartment now can fit 8, and the 10,000 square foot house that someone has can only fit 8. So
Yeah.
really what I think has happened is the city attorney was given a job. Hey, check everybody else's out and give us some ideas. He has then thrown all of it on because there are elements from the Sandy City Code that are put in there. There's elements from the Kanab City Code that's been put in there. There is some from other cities as well. So I mean, really,
It's a hodgepodge now.
right now it is. Let's throw this out. To which,
And Aaron, he admitted that.
Yeah.
right? Which, and it's
That's
not.
exactly what he said.
I don't think it's. I'm gonna also pause. One thing I want everybody to know: Orem so far has been the friendliest amongst their approach and conversation that I have dealt with. Meaning, it is not we're changing it, we're doing this, but rather, hey, we should change it. What is the community? I'd love your feedback. Let's take it. So please know that I think an approach of aggression and everything from the city, that is not the vibe in any way that I have received from Orem. Because really, I've also, with my experience in Provo is always super aggressive and Orem is always super lackadaisical in comparison because of the dichotomy of their universities and towns. Anyways.
What do we know about Linden, our neighboring city?
Can I pause you real quick? I don't want to.
Yeah.
Let me pause it, Marissa. I didn't want to move on if you had other questions. So
No,
sorry.
that was it for now, but I'm sure I'll have more.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Carol, go ahead, and then I'm going to jump in here, and it looks like I want to
What
make
do
sure.
we know about the way that it's written in Linden, our neighboring city, because it's legal there?
Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, to be
I don't
honest.
either.
Okay, we should find out. I will find that out and send it to you guys because that's our neighboring city and it's legal. So they're very tiny, but we should at least find out what's working next door to us.
Yeah.
We know it's not working in Provo because one, it's not legal and there's a gazillion of them.
Sure.
Well,
So-
and Vineyard's our neighbor too.
And it's
Yeah.
not legal.
It's not legal there. So I kind of have concerns saying, oh, let's look at little tiny Linden, which they just don't have anything. It's such a small,
No,
what I
but
mean?
there's rules because I called them yesterday just out of curiosity. There's a business license and there's other things, so we might as well at least find out what is working. And I'm one of the naughty people who has one in Vineyard, and it's terrific. And I just do my best to I baby all my neighbors, no matter where my houses are. I have bought concert tickets, Crumble. I mean, I should own stock in Crumble Cookie with as many Crumble cookies I have bought for
There you
neighbors. But my neighbors.
I'll sign up to be your neighbor, Carol. I'll sign up to be your
Okay,
neighbor.
Yeah,
I'll sign
Remind
up
me,
for any
please
year.
put in the address.
Before we even open a property, we know the people we have to make love us first are our neighbors. But also the last person I want to know what I'm doing are my neighbors. It's none of their business.
Yeah.
So sometimes we are our own worst enemies. We go in, is Isaac on here? Because he went in kind of guns a-blazing, this is what I'm going to do. And yeah, he's not in a great place right now. So we all need to just do it correctly, and just mind our own, just keep it within our own group. If you guys want to talk to each other, we can keep this kind of thing going. But we should not be touting to our neighbors how great this is or anything, because they don't understand it. Personal opinion of Carol. The end. That's
Agreed, Carol.
Also with Isaac, he instantly went the lawyer route and is
He-
filing a lawsuit. And like when he was talking to me, I was like, well, have you talked to this person? Did you know this was happening? Did you go to a city council meeting? He was like, no. And he didn't have a landlord license either. So like
Yeah.
there's like, okay, well, let's get you on the right route,
Well,
because there is a way to solve this without lawyering up immediately.
Providing some associated data, Cottonwood Heights, they had a community meeting probably 2 weeks ago that I attended. They have 85 legal licenses of short-term rentals in Cottonwood Heights and have received 0 complaints. Through a software, they've evaluated there's about 320 short-term rentals in the city, and the code enforcement agents have received over 1,200 code enforcement agent tickets, which also includes pets, weeds, and everything, and they're only able to service about 250 a year. So another piece of this and how a lot of cities are communicating intercity is if there's a legal way to do it, you won't have problems from people who are legally doing it, which
Correct.
everybody who's here, that's what we want. I don't think it's an argument of we don't want regulation, but rather, A, I'm already doing it, so please allow me to continue and grandfather or help me be first in line. I think that's one piece of what everybody here wants. And then two, if there is a bad actor, I too want them kicked out because of
Correct.
these reasons. And because I work
Correct.
to do it legally because it will enhance it. So, and how the code presently is written, it's not the code, sorry. The proposed thing is, it's just ideas. Really from here, we as constituents, positive and negative, will give them feedback and they'll change it. It's really a draft at the moment. But what I
Rachel,
would, go ahead.
I do think, Aaron and Rachel, one of the biggest problems we have is it says none in residential areas.
Right.
That has got to be that, because that puts every single one of us already out of compliance.
Mhm.
So that's huge. I mean, we can work through the numbers. We can the 180-day thing.
Yeah,
That
and,
has
and
to
I,
work.
I honestly
Yeah,
think that they
it
will
does.
change that. 'cause
I do too.
I think they'll change it. Salt Lake
what I-
City,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say South Salt Lake, they just made it so that you can have 2 in residential zones per block. Ogden allows 1. So I think that it will be good practice. Ogden is 1, South Salt Lake is
And
2 per
Okay.
block. So I think that while how it's written right now, we need to remember that literally it's an evolving conversation, and the more that we can be positively collaborative with the city, they will accept it. And from my experience to date, the city attorney, representatives, and council people have been a lot more open of receiving feedback compared to other cities that I have been talking with.
The biggest points on the draft that I was going to approach was that 180-day. Sandy does that. Everyone ignores it, and they don't have a way to enforce it. Also, if you're going, the people who are running short-term rentals well are investors, and it's a full-time gig. They're doing it for a return on their investment. They put education and time into running this. If you limit their amount of income by half, they're not going to do it. So, you're just encouraging bad operators or like side gigs. But like, so there's that. But also, I don't see how they would ever be able to enforce that.
So I already wrote up something and sent to all the councilmen, right? What I included were all the things, I included all the positives, things I liked. I didn't like the 183 days. I didn't like the limit of 8 people. I mean, there was tons of things in there I didn't like.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of ignored that and said, this is what has worked. And I talked with Dana, like I said, on rent, and said this, and I gave him some different online spots because he liked that idea of what has worked that I feel is positive. So I emailed, I kind of just ignored all those crazy negatives because Tom said he just cut and pasted, literally, is what he did from other cities, from other places, and did it. It was just throwing it hodgepodge out there. And so I said, this is what works. These are people who've been doing it for a while, and then went from there and just said, rather than say one, you know what I mean, just saying, this is the positive, this is what's worked in other cities. And then if we go from there and then they say something else, say, well, like you said, 183 days, that's going to hurt the people who are using it for the return on investment, everything else, and then bring up the negative things.
Mhm. So would you suggest doing an
But-
email of like
So
what?
Wait! You guys mute.
Well, that's just what I've already said.
Sorry, hold on.
So
Lisa, mute for 1 second because we're getting some feedback, and let Rachel go. Yeah.
So would you suggest that I on the email do like a section of like what will work and then what won't work?
well,
Hold on. Or just, I mean, because I don't want to just do positives only because, I mean, there are some things like your limit of 8 people. I'm gonna go break that rule by shoving 8 people in a studio apartment. Like, so So that's not a great idea. But like, anyway.
What I would suggest of this whole thing is one is everybody here. I would recommend that each one of you reviews it, and then also just email your associated representative and give your feedback. So that's one piece of it, is because what might be important to us may not be as applicable to each one of you. So that would be one thing. And then the second is, I think that maybe it is, and maybe it's in a group chat or with the email thread, or really just there could be a chat within our Facebook community of, hey, these are the things that we think are most important, so that our collaborative statement identifies a few things, and maybe it's all of us that say, hey, we all believe in a fire code. We all believe in following this and that. And so rather than minutia of what will work or not, but so then that way each point gets brought across, and then collectively, I think that there would be an element of power that says 40 homes, we all agree to these three things, and we want regulation, and we just want to be part of the conversation.
I do also, to add to that, Aaron, because that is terrific, I do also think that a collective voice might be better than inundating them from a whole bunch of owners, because sometimes too much is too much.
That's what I was gonna say. Is we should probably. I don't know if everybody needs to email just one collective voice.
Yeah, I don't know if we have to inundate them. Now, none of us. I mean, we all know that we can go to our politicians and lobby, et cetera, and having a voice in our community is important. So we're not telling anyone otherwise. I'm just wondering if we look like a strong team, talking through Rachel. Or whomever, and
so here, sorry. The only thing I know that I've pushed for this in some ways, Carol and Lisa. There's a piece of it that we have found that because we have a management company, that cities sometimes do not find full validity in our voice. I actually, at the Cottonwood Heights meeting, I gave my associated comment, and the mayor literally paused, because I made a comment that says, I have a community. I think it would be appropriate for you to allow people who are not in compliance to have a conversation and reach out in an immunity. And the mayor paused and said, that offends me that you would even consider that I should allow violators to talk, which is not here nor there, but I don't really care. But because I don't live there, and we're a management company, that we're a business, that there is a tainted voice. And so I personally, from my point, that's why in some ways, Carol and Lisa, there's a little bit more power that you do have by one, living in the city, and also having your interest there and being citizens. And
I don't mind. I'm happy. I see what you're saying, Aaron, and I'm happy to do it. But I really like the avenue that Rachel's going. Why don't we can even all, like Atlas is saying, put things together and send them to you. You kind of draft. Then let us read drafts. Mm-hmm. And if you want me or Lisa or someone to then, I mean, we're all going to go on next, is it Wednesday?
Tuesday, I believe.
Whenever. Yeah. And be collective, but however you want things set up, we don't mind, since we do live here. And, there's another part of it. Now, I don't know. The hardest thing is what they need to realize is
another idea.
I'm going to pause. Yeah, Morgan, go ahead.
I don't think we should do it in place of what you guys are already doing, but Orem has a property all-star award, and they have a really hard time getting people to even apply for it, which means that if you apply for it, you're pretty much guaranteed to get it. And I did that with my property, and we won, and we got, and so what we've got is the city recognizing that we're amazing properties, that we're bringing up property values. And I think if all of us just apply for all of them from now until the thing, we can all bring them in and show that we are contributing to our community, and we are doing it in a way that they approve of.
That's so great, Morgan. That was exactly where I was just going. What the city of Orem also has to realize is we're all review-based. Mm-hmm. I think their biggest problem is landlords, to be honest with you. That's Provo's issue, is the out-of-state landlords is what's causing their problems, because we're review-based. If you go up and down a street, our homes are the prettiest and the best looking and the cleanest, because
Exactly.
if we weren't,
And
we
this
wouldn't
is
get
one
business.
way that we can prove it through the system that they run, that they're trying to
so
get
great.
going, and we're going to help jumpstart that for them, help them in that way, and help ourselves. So I think if all of us just go to the Orem website and apply for the Property All-Star Award, and if even some of us win, we can bring that to the meeting as well.
That's awesome.
It's very cool.
I really
It's
like
a great
that.
idea, Morgan. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to tell you what, and I love my neighbor. He is amazing. He's also a bishop of a young single adults ward. And I'm telling you, twice a week, he has 40 cars outside of his house.
Troublemaker.
My houses are big, but I've never had 40 cars. And no one calls because we all know it's his young adult ward. However, you cannot, this is my biggest thing, you can't hold our feet to the fire on too many cars without holding his feet to the fire for the same cars, same problem.
Yeah.
So this isn't just a short-term rental problem.
Interesting.
I agree. I have one neighbor next to my short-term rental. We have 8 parking spots in the cul-de-sac, and they take up 7 of them with their cars. and they aren't an Airbnb, but we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, what else you got, Aaron? What else you want?
Well, let's see.
Eric had a question here about, do we have any data on what would be considered affordable housing in Orem specifically? For example, how much income does someone need to make to live in Orem? Cost of affordable homes, apartments, in comparison to the average rents in the area. Is that something we want to address with the city? It's just the low hanging
It's
fruit.
We'll let
not
Eric.
something. Yeah, again, you talked about earlier just the low hanging fruit, so that came to mind for me
Yeah.
about just having any data points that may address that. You know, Aaron, you talked about how Cottonwood Heights definitely is not known for affordable housing, but that's the political play that people are using right now is affordable housing and trying to make things actually affordable in their communities when historically there isn't information that supports that. So having any kind of data that shows like, hey, you know, we've got this, you know, my home in Orem is a 6-bedroom home. Like, is your average median household income actually going to be able to purchase that home? The chances are no.
Yeah.
Right? And so to tell me that my home is considered affordable in your market is unfortunately not true. And so just anything that we could do to kind of help have some more information around that, I think would be helpful.
Yeah.
But again, it was just a thought, not something we have to address maybe until it's brought up. But I think having that kind of information is always helpful.
Yeah.
And I think Eric's right on that. Are we finding that this is coming? I don't know the answer. Is this coming because of affordable housing? Because we don't need to address it if that's not what their issue is.
It's always
this
the
just
first,
one-
always globally, this is the first and biggest concern with Airbnb in
Sure.
general. We were just in Spain, and Spain has banned it because of this
Barcelona
specifically.
specifically.
So it is always like I said, low hanging fruit, always the first complaint of anybody who doesn't fully understand.
Right. But is that Orem's issue? Is my curiosity, or is it that they just don't have enough rules and regs about it?
I think it's more so they don't have enough rules and regs about it. They're trying to keep the,
Goat houses from happening.
yes, they're trying to keep the integrity of their neighborhoods, basically. But what they need to hear is that these are really adding to the neighborhoods.
Okay.
Well, and the last thing too that I was just going to add is, I think that the other thing too that's important is from an education standpoint, council people are doing their best, and it's just an aspect that they're not educated. I think highlighting as well the aspect is that there are decibel monitoring systems that could be put in place for violators. There is UVU actually has an accredited long-term or an accredited continuing education course that is 2 weeks, 2 days, and it allows people to be certified in this. And so really, if the city wanted to, they could support their local university, require every host that needs a permit to take the class. That's what they did in Henderson, Nevada, just right outside of Las Vegas. So I think that there's a number of things too that it's an education thing as well. For sake of us coming up on an hour and everything, I'd say let's any last questions that anybody has, and probably two, what's going to be the best means for us to communicate effectively and share feedback and so forth. So first off, any questions, any remaining
Atlas
questions?
has some that we haven't talked about.
Okay, well you
Did
read.
you see this comment? That's terrific.
What if they are not in compliance simply because they didn't realize certain regulations or things weren't already in compliance with their property they are renting?
No, that's not. That's not a reason. It's our jobs to stay in compliance and to find out rules and regs. You can't say, "Oh, but I didn't know." Nope, that's not us.
We do have to know
We
the
have to-
rules, and
we have
currently
to
there
follow
aren't any.
rules.
So, in reality, I do know the property that we managed. The owner went and got his business license for it and asked specifically and said, "This is what I'm doing," and it's a city council person or someone who has since retired who was like, "Oh yeah, you only need a landlord license. This is what you can do."
That's what they told me when I started 8 years ago.
And
so.
exactly, and those should be grandfathered in my opinion. But anyway,
Okay.
Go ahead, Marissa.
Marissa.
Hey, so I just wanted to. So my name is Joaquin, Marissa's husband. So I really liked the point that you guys made that if we can come together with like a unified statement, it's going to make all the difference. And so something that I really thrive on is I sometimes lose thought of things, or like I don't keep track of everything we talked about. So I think you guys have something implemented that we can share. But Marissa shared her phone number in the group chat. So if we can all save each other's contacts, that'd be great for us. And then whenever people have time, like I would love phone calls between each other just to bounce ideas and just make sure we're like on the same page. And ooh, that's a really bad idea. This is the reason, or that's a great idea. So that's really helpful because you can do all the positive things, but if you say the wrong things, it can be really bad for us.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I think the solution, what I want to do is in the discussion on our community conversation event in Facebook, I'll just create a Google Doc and and you guys can do the editing, the commenting on certain things, and I can draft the email and the statement there, and you guys can all chime in on and make comments on it. Does that work?
Yeah, it's terrific. Marissa has a comment.
Question: what about the one that talks about, what was it? They were saying, that you had to have on the calendar it blocked after every stay.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to enforce that either, or what the reasoning is. No idea.
Okay.
I think that also then equals the 180, because if you take the 365 and subtract the every other, that's how they're backing into that number. So yeah, you're right, Marissa. Both of those have to go.
Yeah. So, and I plan on addressing those points and the occupancy one. From what I understand, to get a landlord license, don't you have to have a fire inspection that'll tell you your occupancy?
No, not in Orem.
Oh, you don't? I thought that was included on the...
Oh, that's a CANAB thing.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. So it should be based on fire code, your occupancy, really. But I plan on addressing that one.
That's
but
a really
there were a
tough one in
few.
Orem too. Does that mean that people who have more than 8 kids or more than 8 in their family, they're going to have to go live at grandma's house?
Yeah. Seriously. I mean, there's a lot of them that you can tell they just threw it at the wall to see what sticks because a lot of their rules contradict each other. Like the one that said you don't rent it separately, but if you have an ADU, you can't rent that as a short-term rental. It has to. So like they just contradict.
Well, and one thing I'd like to mention, David Veers is here, and David, we actually have a great resource. He lives here in Utah, and he works for Price Labs. He just pulled up some data here that in Orem, there are, according to this, 265 Airbnb listings with a total gross of all of the housing units in Utah is 32,500. That's also in line with the study that the University of Utah did as well. 1.8 of the total inventory of housing units in Utah are short-term rentals. And I mean, even at the end of the day, if they got rid of all of them, there's still a housing crisis because it's only going to be 1.8 increase in profitability, increase in units, which, for as we've talked about, most of our home isn't. But David, I did want to acknowledge. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Can I ask about that with the AUD thing? Because that's an important one for me. With this House bill being passed in the housing crisis, how does that affect, renting one unit and maybe Airbnb another?
In Linden, you're not allowed to. If you are renting one and you have an ADU, you can't rent both. You can only do one. Now, in Linden, I do think that if you have an ADU, you're required to be owner occupant.
Yeah.
In most, so Marissa probably give me some context. A few years prior, I think it was 2 years ago that they passed opening up the ADU laws. Is that in order to actually get an accessory dwelling unit, you had to have separate HVACs, you had to have firewalls, so that truly you were creating duplexes. Whereas now, because of the housing crisis, they have lowered that threshold. I'm actually working on one in White City, which is a suburb of Sandy. And technically, how it's written, the owner has to live at the property in order to rent the accessory dwelling unit in the basement for it to be a valid ADU. So specific to that, really, it would allow it, but most codes also identify that it cannot be run as a short-term rental. It is geared towards allowing more long-term rental housing units.
Okay, so that one's probably no question not going to pass as far as Airbnb one and someone living in the other.
I think that
We do it.
I
we
think
do it
that
all
it
the
is-
time.
Same in Salt Lake, same in South Salt Lake, so they're probably just going to follow other cities.
Or Sandy, for example. Sandy has it that you can do it 180 days, where it's an accessory dwelling unit. You can do it as a short-term rental for 180 days. And technically, the other 180 days, it has to be a long-term. Now, we have one. We're literally sitting above our ADU. We have guests right now, and we have for the past 5 years that have not stayed for 180 days. Probably the longest stretch that we've had is 4 or 5 months. But it's hard for cities to enforce that.
Yeah,
so
that's something that
I think technically how it will be written that way is that you can't. However, in practice, it's going to be impossible for cities to prove and show that they can, and then thus enforce.
So we could possibly, from the timeline, we're looking at maybe by May 7th we can apply for this. Is that correct?
Yeah, it might be before that. In all honesty, probably the end of April. I mean, I'll actually say this. Jeremy, most of his units are based in South Salt Lake. Could you tell a little bit about the process of them proposing the law, community feedback? What was that timeline like, and give us some of your experience as it relates to that same question.
Yeah, and hi, I kind of joined the Zoom meeting here. It's nice to meet everybody. But we just had a similar situation in like South Salt Lake where probably about like a year ago they started drafting short-term rental regulations, changes to short-term rental regulations, and this is an opposite situation versus like what Orem's doing right now. And South Salt Lake was like very pro short-term rentals. It was very easy to get a business license, and there wasn't really many restrictions to do it. And then kind of just under the radar, they started drafting regulations that made it really restrictive of short-term rentals, and they were also basically starting to question that those licenses that were issued could potentially be revoked from people who were, granted to do the uses and, everything like that. So we had a lot of community feedback, and we kind of took like the pitchfork approach and just tried to be, informative. And I think the most thing that cities, the most effective thing that worked for us is just trying to prove that, we can do short-term rentals and we can do it in a right way. And in many cities, it's the ones that are licensed. And I think Aaron knows, with Sandy, it's the ones that are licensed that they're not the problems. And they kind of put a bad taste in everybody's mouths. And, that's really what I think a lot of cities want to hear is, allowing them in a in a certain amount of supply, and being able to manage them and license them, and just providing proof to them that the licensed ones are the ones that are operating in the right manner, and they're the hosts that the city definitely wants to keep around.
Thank you, Jeremy.
So would you say, Jeremy, that was like a year when this conversation started to like enacting?
No, so the problem is I wasn't really aware that it was happening. I kind of knew that it was going to happen, but I did a really bad job of like checking and watching my like local, planning and zoning and like city council meetings. But if you go back like a year, they started the discussion, and I think we probably could have steered them in a more of a positive direction like earlier on when they were still like deliberating. But we didn't really start to get a lot of involvement probably until like 3 to 4 months when they planned to make like the regulation changes. And they just made the regulation changes, and they were a lot better than what they originally proposed.
Okay.
And a lot of it was because of community feedback and many just like hosts in the area, a lot of licensed hosts specifically. And hosts that were going about it in the right way and wanted to go about it in the right way that made, I think, the most significant impact.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay. Marissa, do you have a question? Your hand is up.
No, sorry.
Oh, you're good. Just
Get
checking.
your hand down. Okay, so action plan from here, everybody, is Rachel came up with a good idea in the group chat here, as well as just in the Facebook community. We will create a Google Doc that kind of outlines some of it. Everybody can give feedback. Probably would be appropriate to do it in the commenting. Because you can be an editor or a commenter. Just add comments and or changes that way. Let's work on it the next time frame in preparation for the meeting next week. But in between, you're more than welcome, like it is everybody's prerogative, to reach out to each other, to the community, and or to a representative as you see fit to begin the conversation. I think probably the biggest thing of anything is collaborative approach. The city wants and knows that this isn't going to go away. I don't think that they are going to ban anything. It's just a matter of they want something in place, and the more that we are involved, the more favorably it will be for us and for those in the future.
Can you use is it a page or just an event? Can we still talk on the event?
So there's actually a section, I haven't used it as much, it's a chat in the Facebook community that is specific to this topic. That's where I thought we could do it. It's just underneath chats. Or if there's a better medium. I don't know exactly, to be honest. I'm a first timer as well on that. So we'll figure it out. But
or in the discussion section.
Atlas dancing, yeah. I'll grab a link right now and put it in the comments on the Facebook community.
Or WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a super easy way, and then it stays collective and people can join.
That's true.
And WhatsApp is great. And quick comment, what Jeremy said I thought was wonderful. I'm just hoping what we can do with Orem is to get a jump on that. Like you said, it had been 3 or 4 months. They'd already gotten down the road. That's why I've been wanting to get a jump on it early to say, this is what we think works. We're trying to do it well, that kind of thing. And then say, these other things probably won't work, or, anyways, just so they have a lot of feedback from like Rachel, from the whole group kind of thing, and getting it done early before everybody started thinking, oh, let's follow this part of the draft, that part of the draft.
Yeah.
Then you're backpedaling.
Agreed. So my goal is to have a draft by tomorrow. I'll post it in the chat. Did you just share a link?
I just put a link in the comments there, as well as I will go through and just invite everybody to it. It looks like it's a similar feature. David, thanks so much for testing. It looks like it works. But it's a similar iteration to WhatsApp, but we can join there and we'll begin the conversation. My wife's just stepping out to manage little ones. I'll stay on for a little bit to answer any specific questions that anybody might have, but thanks so much. I've recorded this, everybody, so that I'll post it as well so other people can look at it, or if we can check back. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Aaron.